The coronavirus pandemic is very much a job story. Despite increasing talks of easing restrictions, Brendan Rynn, chief economist at KPMG, is forecasting unemployment to get worse before it gets better.
Our expectation was that we'll see an extra 1 million people added to the unemployed or idle workforce by the end of the June quarter. That would push the unemployment rate somewhere between about 11.5% to 12.5% by the end of June.
Innes Willicks, CEO of Australian Industry Group, believes the current impact on employment is only phase one.
Pipeline businesses were working on their cash flow has all dried up, and all of that will impact on decisions they make through the second half of this year. So that June, July, August period is going to be particularly difficult. So that's going to be another economic wave of destruction, we fear.
Accommodation and food services workers have been hit the hardest, with almost a quarter of jobs lost. Arts and recreation services followed, with employment down 19%. Professional services employed 1.1 million people pre-coronavirus, making it one of the biggest employment groups in the country. The industry has taken an 8% hit during the pandemic, and Innes says there might be more pain to come. Discretionary spend is going to come under intense pressure. What's most at risk here is discretionary spend. So things like training, marketing, and services that businesses could perhaps do without when things are really tough. Employers are trying to limit the impact of the virus on the job market. Julia Angrisano, National Secretary for the Financial Services Union, has seen a big push for redeployment in her sector.
We've seen lots of movement of staff where there's a lack of capacity into what we're calling hot areas or demand areas in the banks, specifically call centres. Call volumes at the big banks are up as high as 400%. The hard part, I suppose, is that these people might be doing work that's different, but there's been an appropriate level of upskilling and training where required so that they can provide service to customers quickly. Some employees are also being asked to use their accrued leave. Asking employees to take leave is a very legitimate rationale to help businesses get through this while maintaining the employment contract with their employee. This is a cost, though, for employers, because employers are still paying it, but they get, on the upside, they get the benefit in reduced provisions for leave that they have to hold on to as they come out of this. Under the new JobKeeper changes to the Fair Work Act, some employers can request an employee take paid annual leave as long as the employee keeps a balance of at least 2 weeks paid leave. The FSU has accused one of the Big Four banks of abusing this clause. It looks to be a grey area. Taking people out of the workplace to improve the bank's liability when it comes to annual leave isn't always the right thing to do. So we do have concerns where we see it occurring, where we feel it's opportunistic and in response to COVID-19, but not necessarily because we're trying to address an issue of not enough work to be performed. Some big companies are implementing pay cuts across all staff, not always corresponding with a reduction in hours. But employees need to give consent to taking a pay cut. If no agreement is reached, Innes Willicks says it might put employers in an awkward position. If the employee chooses not to consent, then the business is left with a choice. Either they agree that the employee remains on full pay and keeps working, and that will have an impact for someone else within the business. Or they make a decision that, well, look, we just can't keep going with this employee. We'll have to take other measures. Pay cuts can't be enforced, but obviously for businesses, there's only so much money coming in and only so much money they can go out with. If people aren't able to be adaptable, obviously there are going to be employment consequences either for them or somebody else within the business. If there's simply no work available, as has been the case for restaurants, retailers and major airlines, employees can be stood down. Employers don't usually need to pay employees during a stand down, but can choose to. You are saying to an employee, look, your services aren't required at the moment,
but often you can't say how long that will be for. So it's about maintaining contact with the employee through this period. It creates enormous uncertainty, because if business does continue to turn down, then the next step is redundancy, and that's what businesses are looking at, and that is of course a cost to business.
Many changes will not be temporary, and the workplace of the future may look very different beyond the pandemic.
There's been wholesale changes to the way our economy works, the way our labour market works, and they're going to not be reversed. You know, people talk about bounce back to normal. Fully anticipate there to be a new normal, whatever that might be.
The whole employment relationship has changed, and we can see from our talking to our members that coming out of this, there's going to be a much greater focus on working remotely, working from home, a much bigger emphasis on technology and technologically driven solutions to work and to relationships. There may not need to be as much space within offices as there once was in the past. The way we manage a workforce in the new environment, because of all the circumstances we've gone through, will be different to the way we managed in the past.